And you know what they say? The best comics have a silhouette, right? Think of a comic you know. Rosie. There's a look.
Yeah.
There's a look and a silhouette, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ellen had that look, right? She always wore the same kind of thing. Mae
Sandra.
Martin, for a long time, wore the same thing.
Yeah.
I remember the email came, and it was like, she's so funny. When she emails me, it's just like one sentence. She said, like, I got something for you. And then it said, with Meryl.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like,
Meryl who?
Right, you mean Meryl,
yeah.
Right? Meryl? You know, all this is a very sort of cabaret style.
Yeah.
And so even when I'm in a stand-up space, I have a bit of a cabaret thing about me.
Yes. I think what I appreciate so much about your commentary and your stand-up is you're taking things, you know, that are fairly unpopular, like, and you're enthusiastic about them.
Right.
I think that is such a funny, you know, flip on its head.
That's where your success is going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
Not by staying in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
But by pushing, taking that uncomfortable step, being wrong, being bad at first, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sticking with it, staying courageous, have courage. You know how comics say, let me tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
I always think, please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't. Just
Please
don't. Just show me you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Life in Bold. My name is, of course, Ben Hawes, and this is a fantastic podcast. That's a quote from myself. And today we have somebody that I really respect and admire, somebody that I saw at a comedy show a year, maybe 2 years ago. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And we've done a couple of comedy shows together, and you are just somebody who I think is so funny, like just flat out. You're a stand-up comedian. You're an actor.
Yes.
And you were in the movie with Meryl Streep.
Yes.
Which is so cool.
Florence Foster Jenkins.
Florence Foster Jenkins. And I have a friend who actually showed me that movie. One of my best friends, Denise, loves that movie.
Oh, great.
And you played quite a significant character in the movie.
Yes.
And I was just watching that and I go, Denise, you're never going to guess who I'm interviewing today. And the person that I'm interviewing today is the one and the only David Mills.
Thank you. What an intro.
Gosh.
What an intro. I'm thrilled. Well, I'm thrilled to be here. And like you, I recall when we met, because of course I knew you from your clips online.
Oh, wow.
I'm not a TikTok person, but I am an Instagram person. So I saw it via Instagram. And anyway, blah, blah, blah. There you show up on the show. And I was like, oh, I know this guy.
Wow.
I know this guy. And maybe, do you always do music, or
pretty much? Well, you know what? Actually, before I was doing music, I was doing stand-up for about 6 months.
And
so
maybe your clips I saw were stand-up and not music. So I think I recall being, oh, there's a music moment happening.
Yeah.
Or you opened your set with stand-up and then you brought the music in.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. So I was surprised because, you know, I built much of my career in London. I was in London for 23 years. And one of the differences between the comedy world there and the comedy world here in New York is there's much more variety of form. So you will be on a show and there will be a musical comic, or there will be a character comic as well.
I love that.
Or there'll be a ventriloquist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, there's the conventional stand-up too, but that is much more of a frequent experience than we have here in New York. And when you brought the guitar, and I thought, oh, I'm thrilled. I'm so excited. We're back to what I know.
Yeah.
You know
so do you think that kind of thing would do well in London?
I think I'll tell you what, people are not surprised by it.
Yes.
Whereas
that's
here,
true.
I think in a conventional comedy show, sometimes people take a moment just to be like, what's happening? Wait a minute. Wait, what?
Yeah.
What? You know what I mean?
I know.
And in London, they're more used to it.
So it would be maybe not a tougher crowd, but it would be a barrier to get. You have to really be funny.
No, it's not so much that. I think the barrier is here because you can lose people. They're a little bit like, wait, what? What?
Yeah.
And then you've got to somehow get them back. Whereas in London, I don't imagine you experience that kind of obstacle. It's just it's smoother because they're used to, someone with a guitar, right? You know, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's so funny because I do notice in New York, and I've performed a little bit elsewhere, but not a ton. I've only actually been performing seriously and actually like pursuing musical comedy and comedy in general for about 3 years now.
Right.
And that was when I turned 30. So I moved to New York when I was 22, and then I moved here for comedy. And then I essentially kind of pursued startup jobs and a 9 to 5 and stuff like that to kind of pursue.
To survive.
security.
Yeah,
and then
totally.
the last 10 years, that hasn't been very secure. You know, like having a 9 to 5 has not proven to be the most secure way to live my life.
Right.
I've gotten laid off a couple of times.
Right.
You know, it's just not. And then
and your mental health and emotional health as well is worth considering.
Yeah.
Right?
And you also, you know, a lot of these jobs that I would want are at more of the startup companies and more of the companies where it's all about hard work and like a lot about like truly dedicating yourself and your life to the company and the mission of the company. And, you know, my friend, I was job hunting all of 2024 because I got laid off in January of 2024. And I was job hunting the whole year. And my best friend who lives in Portland, Oregon goes, I think they're looking at your Instagram and seeing that you don't want to give your whole life to a company because you have a photo booth. I run a photo booth company. That's like my main hustle right now. And then I have my comedy. I have my websites. I have my EPs. You know, they can see that I have other things going on.
And not just other things, but big things.
Yeah, things that I deeply, deeply care about.
Yeah, and take up a lot of time.
Yeah, so I have performed elsewhere, but I would love to go to London or other places.
You got to. It's a great scene over there. Mm-hmm. It's a great scene. There's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. So when did you move to London? What year? How old were you?
Okay, so London. I had been living in San Francisco.
Okay.
After university, I did.
Where did you go to college?
UC San Diego.
Okay, I went to school in San Francisco. I went to SF State, and I grew up in the East Bay.
Oh, right. Interesting. Where'd you grow up?
In Martinez. Ever heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't know it.
They have a Walmart. So when you're driving past and you see Walmart, that's my hometown.
Okay. Well, I grew up on the East Coast, but we moved to California my senior year in high school.
Yeah.
And so I, outside LA, so I went to UC San Diego and I studied drama and political science to be, you know.
Interesting.
Who knows why. I went to San Francisco after that, and this is in the 90s. So I was in San Francisco for about 6 years in San Francisco, and that's where I started doing stand-up.
Yes.
And I'd done a bit of acting in San Diego, and I did a little bit of acting in San Francisco as well. But anyway, so had some success in San Francisco. But the reality about San Francisco, as you know, it's a small town.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I had a great time in the 90s.
Yes.
A great time. But after I had slept with everyone,
yes,
you know, and performed pretty much on all the comedy stages, I thought, I got to get out of here. And I was in my early 30s. And so a bunch of friends had moved to New York. So I moved to New York in 99. And I was here and doing bits of comedy and got a job like you did in the first .com boom.
Yes. Oh, right? Cool. Yeah.
And there was a lot of money.
Any company we would know, or
probably not.
Yeah.
There
were so many.
They all went to the wall. Yeah. And we, you know, our thing was digital solutions.
Right. Yes.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Right. No one knew what any of it meant. Right. So they were all throwing money because they knew they had to get online, but they didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
And we were just selling air. You know, making it sound good and charging a lot of money. I didn't know the first thing.
What was your job?
I was exactly. What was my job? Right.
Everything.
I was head of editorial.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Basically, I was older than all the coders.
Oh yeah.
And the CEO, and I could speak to the board. I could, you know, I was an adult. I was in my 30s. These were all kids, nerdy kids in their 20s.
Yeah.
They needed someone who could go to meetings, look like an adult, speak a lot of bullshit. Don't ask me what we were selling because I don't know. And anyway, we did. And ultimately, came here to be a performer and really felt intimidated by the New York scene.
Wow. Okay.
It was very, very different in the 90s and the late 90s. And I was very scared. I had been a big fish in San Francisco, and I came and I realized I was a very, very small fish in New York.
Was it more about your abilities as a stand-up or as a comedian, or was it more about networking? Or?
It was all that. You know, I had only been doing it for maybe 6 years. It was early in my development.
Yeah.
I had a point of view in San Francisco, but that point of view didn't make any sense in New York somehow. I couldn't really connect with anyone. I hated the open mics.
Yeah.
It just really threw me.
Yeah.
And my job was, I was making more money than I'd ever made. I didn't know what I was doing. None of us did. No wonder that whole thing collapsed. But then the company said, oh, we bought this company in London, but the leadership of the company walked out. Who can go to London? Who can go?
Oh, wow.
So I said, oh, I'll go. And they go, we're sending you for 6 weeks. So I went over as creative director.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're making websites, basically. And then 6 weeks turned into 3 months, turned into 6 months.
Yeah.
And then they were like, listen, either you've got to come back or you've got to change everything over to British.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, you know what? I can always go back to New York. Fuck it. I'll just stay.
And
I was loving it.
Yeah.
And when I got to London, I said, I'm done performing.
Oh.
I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. And that lasted for about 5 years before I started performing again. And then I started sort of with a cabaret act, which I still do.
Yeah.
And had some success with that. But then, I remember being on the Underground, the Tube in London, around Christmas time one time. And there were all these posters everywhere of all these different comics, stand-up comics playing Wembley. Meanwhile, I'm playing the very few cabaret clubs, having to pay my piano player.
Of course.
After a certain point, I said, you know what? I'm going to drop the piano player. I'm going to keep the suit. I'm going to keep the stool. I'm just going to tell jokes on a stool, done. And I'm going to do that in the stand-up world. And then my stand-up career, then I started moving into stand-up, and that quickly kind of became its own thing.
Yeah.
And then I brought cabaret back into the equation. So that was, I moved there in June of 2000.
Okay.
And I think I was, I don't know, 32, something like that.
Yeah.
So I was only in New York for 18 months.
Yeah.
And then I moved in
That's
June
so
of 2000,
interesting.
and I stayed until 2023, February 2023.
Oh my gosh. And so you had a whole life in London.
Yeah.
Friends,
Family,
career.
friends,
Yeah.
a whole,
Oh my
a whole
gosh.
thing, yeah.
That is so cool. And so what made you move back? Was it just time?
I was coming out of a relationship that
Yeah.
had all gone sour,
Okay.
and my career had, both in stand-up and in acting, had sort of hit a plateau.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was spinning my wheels, and I couldn't break through. And I mean, I had broken through to a certain level, but I couldn't get to the next level.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling inspired.
Yeah.
And so there was an opportunity to stay at a friend's in the beginning of 2023. He went to Mexico for 3 months.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Lives in Brooklyn. He said, just stay in my place. Don't worry, you won't have to pay rent. And
Wow.
so I said, you know what? I'm going to give it a try and see what this feels like. Pretty quickly got on the comedy circuit and was like, okay,
It's working.
maybe there's something here for me. I still had a crowd of friends
Yeah.
that I had maintained. So I was coming into a network of, at least social network.
Yeah.
And I had to get out of that relationship.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know what? I love you, London. But almost in the way that I went to London, I thought, oh, I can always go back to New York. It'll always be there.
Right.
Now I feel that about
You
London.
could go back to London.
I can always go there. I have a passport now.
Yes.
I have true family.
Are you,
you know.
now? Do you have? Are you like a British person?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Well, I'm an American, but
American.
I've got also now British
yes,
as well.
that's so cool.
And I have an agent over there, and so I can.
Yes, I saw on your Instagram, UK agent,
Yeah, yeah,
American
yeah,
agent,
yeah.
very glam.
Yeah, it's so glamorous,
Yeah.
right?
I should just put that, like, just put
Yeah,
just put
just
you
do
as my
it.
agent in
Yeah,
the UK.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Or like get another email address,
Yeah,
and just so it sounds.
there was some influencer that I followed, and I noticed it was as they were growing, they used to have like some I love this and this, or this is my job and I do this and this, but then they changed it to for booking inquiries.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's where you know.
Yeah.
That's where you know. Okay, something's happening. Here.
Yeah. But you know who I know well?
Yeah.
And saw her explode and started as a musical comedian.
Oh, who is it?
Is Mae Martin.
Oh my God.
Mae Martin.
I love Mae Martin.
Oh my, the greatest.
Handsome podcast.
And she, actually I haven't listened to the podcast.
Okay, but
I know it, and I know
You
I
know
love
Mae
her.
Mar- oh my
I love her,
God.
and I remember seeing her at the Edinburgh Fringe. She had just come over from Canada. She had a bit of a career. Well, she had a nice career in Canada.
Yeah.
And she was young. Came over to, and I don't know if she's she anymore, but at that
I
time,
think on the podcast, there's they. I think there's
right?
they.
I think at that time she was she. Anyway,
Yeah, right.
They
Evolution.
were, yeah. They were just a young,
Oh
funny,
my
so
God. I'm such a
funny,
fan.
and had this hilarious song about their crush on Don Cheadle.
Oh my gosh.
It
That's
was
funny.
so funny.
And what was the song about? Like, was it about?
It was this crazy dream sequence.
Yes.
Where she was like in an
have to
action.
find
They were
this.
in an action film with Don Cheadle.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's on YouTube. It's
Yeah.
so good, so clever, so sharp and original. And
Yeah.
I just fell in love with Mae Martin. And I
you met
remember I
them
was like
in London.
at the Edinburgh Fringe.
Oh my gosh.
And then carried on, and I remember we each did an hour together,
Wow.
an evening of
Yeah.
each of us at the in London, and then I was on a live sort of talk show, and they were a guest on the show,
Yeah.
and they were the best.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh!
they are.
I listen to the Handsome podcast. I'm a big like Tig Notaro and Fortune Feimster fan, and so I have become familiar with May, and they're so funny. Especially, I mean, on the podcast, I watched their special, and they talk about how they were doing. And I'm thinking about your video about the they pronoun, and and then they are going to go up to there and there and there, because I watched so many of your videos today, and it's just there's so many funny ones. But like they talk about how they used to do musical comedy, and that they felt that it's weird, like that it's like was a bad songs. So it's really great to hear you say that. It was amazing and funny.
Brilliant!
And so it's
so
I wonder,
good. And they are they have now pivoted. You know this, and they're a
regular
sort of a pop
music.
star or something.
I know.
It's I think
cool.
I'd be surprised if there isn't a bit of comedy in there.
Totally.
But they've that talent is there, so why not?
Do you sing at all?
Well, yeah, because I have a cabaret show.
Yeah, you sing, and so what are your songs about? Are you doing originals? Are you doing?
I'm not doing originals.
Yeah, I remember one of the first things that I noticed about you when I first met you was that you had a very legit sounding show, and that you were like you're doing it at some venue, and I was like, okay, that seems like something to work toward,
Well, not far from here.
Yeah,
I've done it a lot at Pangea.
Yes, yeah, I think that was the venue that I've seen it, and I've never performed there, and I've never seen a show there.
It's great,
but it seems like a good place to go.
It's great, and it's it's proper old school cabaret.
Yeah,
I mean, what I do is a mix of stand up and music, but they don't normally do that. More their stuff is kind of, woman in the velvet dress, that kind of thing.
Right.
But they have an alternative take on cabaret.
Yeah.
And they have some of the great old cabaret, alternative cabaret stars from the 90s and 2000s who come through, and new people coming up. Yeah, it's a great place to go and
I have to ask you a question about the word cabaret. I'm curious how you define it, because I find that I do my musical comedy and I talk, but then it seems like people who do it more with a piano, or people who do it more with maybe other instruments than my style of guitar is more cabaret.
Well, it's interesting you say that. In the U.S., I think it feels very limited. It's sort of piano-based, typically.
Yeah.
However, in London, cabaret is a much broader...
Okay.
In the U.K., it's a much broader form.
Yeah.
So sometimes someone will, like you said, have a guitar. Sometimes, like I said, someone will be a ventriloquist. And they'll all be lumped into cabaret.
Yeah, right.
Right? So, or just comedy.
Yeah.
It's funny. I do a kind of burlesque show in London. I'm the comedy act.
Yeah.
But really, because of my long sort of experience in cabaret, my approach is always cabaret. That's what the stool is about.
Yes.
I'm always on a stool.
Yes, and
I'm always
the young people.
All this is a very sort of cabaret style.
Yeah.
And so even when I'm in a stand-up space, I have a bit of a cabaret thing about me.
Yes.
And so I can do these burlesque shows. They have align more with cabaret than comedy.
Yeah.
But it's still comedy, but the look has more of a cabaret look.
Right.
I
asked, do you know who David Dabin is? He's a pianist. He's I think he's a what's the word I'm looking for? A musical arranger, and he worked on Oh Mary.
Oh,
and,
brilliant!
I was able to have coffee with him recently, and
Amazing.
I asked him that same question, like, how do you define cabaret? Because I'm just learning, like I'm just figuring it out, and like I sometimes people say, oh, I played Kat Cohen. Do you know her?
Oh yeah, of course.
I played on her show, and hers is Cabaret, and it's at Club Cumming, and that's cabaret. And so I'm like, where am I in cabaret? Like, is there something in there for me? Because I do love the idea of cabaret, but then I'm also kind of coming out with a guitar and kind of this playing not a character, but a version of myself that's a total like rock star kind of thing. And like, there's something in the world of like, I imagine myself playing in a stadium these songs.
Yeah, and I think that you bring that energy, and I think that's a great archetype to kind of play with.
Yeah.
Two things to say.
Yeah.
Regarding this question around cabaret, I think that, I say it in the show as well. I say like, Oh, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm grateful to be doing Cabaret because usually I'm out on the stand-up comedy circuit, playing all sort of shitty comedy basements across New York, and it's great to do Cabaret because the stakes are so low, right? And what I mean by that is, you're never going to get a Netflix special doing Cabaret. Mm-hmm. You're never going to ride. There's a whole industry for stand-up, right? And it looks like stand-up. Yeah. It doesn't look like Cabaret. Mm-hmm. So the reason to do Cabaret is to develop a voice and a style and a take that you can then bring to stand-up.
Yeah, right.
Right? Mm-hmm. And don't expect to make money in Cabaret. Yeah. Keep a foot in both camps. Mm-hmm. Let them cross-pollinate, but make sure you can do in front of the mic, without the guitar, just jokes. Yeah. Because that's how you, unfortunately, in America, that's how you move forward in stand-up. That's just the truth. Yeah. And yes, you can have a Cabaret career on the other side, and you can build in that world too, but that world is never going to propel you into much. I mean, sure, Cola Scola, fine, one. That's one. Yeah. Cat Cohen,
but also Cole is doing acting, and there's so much to
and
it.
his Cabaret always had a lot of acting in it. Yeah. And that's the thing about Cabaret. Yeah. You can have acting moments. Yeah. Mine does as well. You can have jokes. You can have drama. You can have irony. You can have so many. You don't need to define as much as you do in stand-up. Mm-hmm. You really, in stand-up, I hate to say it. Yeah. We need to be conventional. Right. Inform. Yeah. Because as I said, you can just be doing a show, and as soon as you break out of the form, people are like, what's happening? Right. And then you've lost them. Yeah. And interesting. Promoters don't want that. Club owners don't want that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. As good as it is, they're like, no. This thing, I need them laughing. We need money. And I need it to look like what it looks like. Yeah. And that's what works on social media and da-da-da-da.
So now what's your real opinion about like a musical comedian with a guitar? Now, do you feel like that is Cabaret, and that is kind of in that same category of you have to be able to do stand-up? Or do you think that a musical comedian should more follow the career path of a musician?
Well, what I see about you and what I see about so many young talents is you're forging your own path, regardless of the clubs, regardless of the industry. Yeah. You're building your own audience. And frankly, these days, you build your own audience big enough, the industry comes to you. Right? Right. I mean, that's the great story about Kevin Hart. Yes, right? Kevin Hart, as you probably know, gigged, built a whole following. Yeah. Just among the black audience. Yeah. Hollywood wasn't interested. Yeah. But then he got so big, he was playing Madison Square Garden. Right. Hollywood had to let him in. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? He broke the door down. And it's true because your form is different, because Cat Cohen's form is different. If you want to follow that, you've got to accept that a lot of gatekeepers are not going to look at you because they don't understand it, they don't get it, they don't want it. Right. That doesn't mean you can't build your own thing. Yeah. And ultimately make it so big and so successful they have to come to you. Right. Or you can say, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to continue to do this, but I'm going to play by their rules for these clubs, and I'm going to play by my rules for these clubs. Yeah. Because I notice when I'll do a stand-up show, like that's shows that we've done together. I will come up and I'll bring the guitar, and the audience is like into it. Like the audience is audiences they also enjoy that. They will enjoy it. They'll laugh, and a lot of times, especially if I do a stand-up show, they'll maybe put me last, and end with a song. It's hard to follow music. Yeah, it is. It's hard for any act to go do stand-up after someone's just done a musical act. It is, and people say that, and like it's only. I actually want to write a song about how the easiest way to become the headliner is to just get a guitar. Bring a guitar. That's funny. That's funny. And because they'll just put you at the end because it's music, so we'll put you at the end. Mm-hmm. It makes it very easy to get to the end of the show, and people are warmed up and everything. But I do think about my stand-up skills and what I want to do in my storytelling and all of that. And you are so good at just getting up and talking and interacting, and you say the funniest stuff. Thank you. I remember one time you were talking about Hudson Yards. Yeah. And how Hudson Yards is the new frontier of New York, and all the young people are going to Hudson Yards. Yeah. And I think what I appreciate so much about your commentary and your stand-up is you're taking things, that are fairly unpopular,
and you're enthusiastic about them.
Right.
I think that is such a funny, flip on its head. And I wanted to ask you how much you talk about your own life too, and your own stories and all of that, because you're so kind of observational, and you talk about the funny things about New York and the funny things about London and the funny things about young people and all of that. But like, when I sing my songs, I have trouble singing just observationally. Like, I kind of have at this point, like, have to be like, when I was in high school, I did this.
Right.
And
right.
What's your relationship with telling your own story?
I don't.
Okay. End of episode.
No, I really have, and I've
It's not
observed
about that
this.
for you.
I've observed
Yeah.
this. I don't know if it's what I grew up with, my era, or what. Comics that have come after me and generations of comics really plunge their interior lives and bring that to the fore and find so much material in that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's that whole thing, that idea, write about what you know. People say that, and I totally understand that advice. I come from a different tradition, and that is, if you see an hour of my stand-up, the reality is you'll know a lot about me.
Yeah.
But not because I've told you anything, right? You'll understand my perspective. You'll understand my, challenges, how I see the world, what I think, and what I feel. But not because I told you I feel those things.
Yeah.
Because I talk about other things, and it comes through, right?
Yes, totally.
And so you are right when you talk about the way I talk about Hudson Yards, but pretty much everything. My approach always is to celebrate the things that I really don't like, as a way to show how ridiculous they are.
Yes.
And how ridiculous the people who enjoy them are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing, and I've tried to write material about my own life, and I always feel so trite. I always feel like, why does anyone give a fuck about who I am and what my story is? I just don't. I don't give a fuck about it, so why should you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I find that, like, when I'm writing songs, I can do it, but I can't get up and just tell a story about myself the same way.
Right.
I started doing about 6 months of open mic nights before I picked up the guitar with just stand up.
Right.
And I would go and tell stories about, like, childhood and asking girls out in high school.
Yeah.
And, little moments. I right now I'm really focused on, like, my high school awkwardness, because I think that's an easy place to start, and like people relate. And it's the most fiery in my head. It's the most it's the most awkward time of my life. But also I was pretty cool, and I had friends, and I was pop culture and everything. So like, one of my songs, you came to my show, and one of my songs is about my crush on Miley Cyrus.
Yes, that's right.
And like,
yes, I recall.
I just like walked around saying, oh, I think Miley Cyrus is so hot, and like that, before I came out, the last,
I love it.
And then I'm working to get into the college years, and like, because I have a relationship in college that like really was harmful and hurtful, and not abusive or anything, but like just kind of like rejection and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I want to explore that. I saw a show where somebody talked about their first love, and I was like, that would be an interesting thing to write about in song or whatever. But then when I think about stand-up, I actually do consider maybe doing it in a similar way, where you can comment on things and say, oh, Miley Cyrus and, the train and Hudson Yards and things like that. But then I like how you say your perspective comes out, even though you're not saying so. When I was 36, I went to this place. And
it's about finding finding something that kind of resonates with you.
Yeah.
That allows your perspective to come through. That says something about you, but without saying I'm gonna talk about me, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've always said, like, how comics say, let me tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
I always think, please don't.
Yeah.
Please don't. Just show me you. Don't tell me you.
Yeah.
Show me you. Let me see it. Let me observe it, through your story about your interaction in the world.
Right.
You know what I mean? That has nothing, don't
don't label it. Like,
you don't have to label it. I'll get it. Don't worry. Don't worry. But this is also generational. younger generation, so much social media is about revealing yourself and sharing yourself, and this is new.
Yeah.
Like, young people don't realize this is new. This is not 30 years ago. That's not the way we went through the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's why social media has been so challenging for me.
I was going to ask you about social media because yours is really good.
Well, but it's not me sharing my day or my stories or my experience. You know what I mean?
You're not vlogging.
I'm not vlogging.
Yeah.
I'm seeing things around the world that I think are interesting and posting those.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
But again, if you follow it, you will learn about me.
No, I totally agree. And like I was going to also ask you about your like your influences and favorite comedians like in the 90s or like of that generation, because like in high school I really loved the Ellen special, Here and Now. I was just all about it. Of course, whatever about Ellen now, but like I was so into that. Like I thought her comedy of like going down trails and kind of like thinking about just the way she would get distracted.
It was quite absurd.
Kind of like
she
that.
was really an absurdist.
Yeah.
Because the stories, the places they went were so unexpected and surreal, really.
And of course I loved the Rosie show.
Oh, right. Yes.
That's
amazing.
My mom had one of these dolls when I was growing up, and I recently got one on eBay.
That's amazing.
And I always loved it because when it doesn't have a battery in it, but when you pushed it, it would go, "You're a cutie patootie."
Hilarious.
And I just always loved that doll. So my
Yeah.
mom had one of these. So it's probably still somewhere in her house, but I bought one, and
That's
but I loved
amazing.
Rosie. I loved Ellen, and I also found myself really attracted to more women comedians.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. So the person who I would say, as far as a comic goes, who had the most influence on me or inspired me the most was Sandra Bernhard.
Oh my God, that's so good that you said that. And what was your first introduction to her, or
really
what did you love about
it was
her so
Without
much?
You I'm Nothing. Have you seen Without You I'm Nothing?
I don't think I've seen that one. I need
So
to watch it today.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's absolutely incredible, and it's been so much work is derivative of that.
Yeah.
And then all her stuff on Letterman. If you go on YouTube,
I've watched the whole
it's
thing.
incredible.
She's
And the way
so funny.
she sort of talks about celebrity, but is a celebrity at the same time.
Yeah.
So many people have ripped that off.
Oh yeah.
And she did it first. I mean, maybe not first, but she did it in a way that was unreal.
Yeah.
So that era of Sandra Bernhard
Yeah.
really, really inspires me still
Yeah.
today.
Right.
But really, the comics, beyond that, the comics that that inspire me, that I look at, are before that.
Right.
It's like Don Rickles.
Because you were like doing comedy in the 90s. You were an adult.
I began in the 90s.
Yeah,
yes,
right.
I began in the 90s.
Yeah.
But I'm talking, comics from the 70s.
Yeah,
that I grew up watching on TV.
Yes.
Bob Newhart, Jonathan Winters, Joan Rivers, of course, Phyllis Diller.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, these comics are the ones that I return to again. Lily Tomlin.
Yes.
I return to again and again and again. And I see so much contemporary comedy. I'm out there on the circuit. I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
It's all, comes through to me on social media. But there are few, just because it's not my taste. I'm not saying they're not good. They are good.
Right.
It just so rarely
There's
are they the kinds of comics that are inspiring me. My inspiration comes from another moment, typically.
And that's so cool. It's
just old. It's just what happens when you get old.
No, but I find it to be. I do find those. I love like old sitcoms and like I love just stand up specials from the past and stuff like that. So like I feel like growing up, like my parents, we always watch like TV Land. So like I was always watching like the older shows and
like Sanford and Son,
Sanford and Son,
and the Jeffersons, and all that stuff.
I
Maude
recently, right in the pandemic, I started watching Mary Tyler Moore. Because I don't know why I had never seen it. I don't know if it just wasn't on TV Land at the time or they didn't have the deal or whatever, but like
set you free.
I thought that was just the most great show.
Well, you know who I love?
Who?
Ted Knight.
Ted Knight is the character.
Yeah, the weatherman.
Yes, so
or the news
good.
guy.
Yes,
so good.
You would have been
so
good at that.
Funny.
Yeah,
I love him. I can watch him for hours. I think he is
Yeah,
so
he's
good.
so funny.
Yeah.
And that show, I mean, I love to watch how those things came about because they're so original. And nowadays there's a lot of remakes and a lot of like redoing of a form, and there's different shows that come out, but like, and TV is not the same. They're not doing TV the same way with the same sitcoms.
It doesn't have the same role in culture it had then as
right.
well, right? So when she was she was pushing lots. She was a real pioneer. She was pushing, a single woman who was not every episode about finding a man, wasn't divorced, wasn't looking for a husband, was just really mostly focused on her career and her friends. The end. You know what I mean? And, the network was really like, okay, we love it, but she's got to have a love interest.
Yeah.
And she stood her ground and said no. And people ate it up. It was really something different. And when was the last time on TV? I guess maybe on streaming.
Yeah.
You see things like that really are about really contemporary and talking about the moment.
Yeah.
But they don't. I mean, that was the sort of thing that like 70% of America looked at.
Yeah.
Now there's nothing. Maybe the Super Bowl.
Yeah, maybe.
But there's just nothing like that anymore that we're all sharing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's so interesting. Now I want to ask you about your acting. Because now I think that you do all kinds of things. You're doing stand-up, you're doing cabaret, you're acting. Are you writing things?
Yeah, well, I write
all the time.
my material.
Yeah.
And cabaret, there's a lot of monologues in it.
There was I watched the pilot of The Two. Is that what it's called? Those two?
Yeah.
Now, that was so funny. I thought that was so funny.
I'm so glad you liked it.
I found it to be extremely entertaining and well-produced and good acting and funny. Yeah. And
she's hilarious. I love her.
Yeah, I just thought that was just such... I love that you have so much looking back that you can say, oh, I did this and I did this and I did that. And you've done so much, and you've acted with, literally Meryl Streep. And my friend Denise was like, you have to ask, you have to ask about that. And of course, I'm not going to ask what was it like working with Meryl Streep, but was there anything that you were internally, this is Life in Bold, you're working with basically one of the greatest actresses, ever. That must feel awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was an incredible... It was completely incredible. I mean, you got to imagine.
The movie, I've seen the movie, and the movie is so
a lot of
fun and absurd and just kind of like, it's very playful.
Yes.
And I mean, how did you get into that? Like, how did you, acting? Like, tell me about your acting career.
I had studied acting in college, and I'd done theater and stuff. And but it had been a while since I had acted, and I had never done any film. And I was on stage doing stand-up, and afterwards, someone approached me, and she's a casting director.
Yeah.
And she exclusively works with a director called Stephen Frears, who directed Florence Foster Jenkins, but has a long career of directing all sorts of really great films.
Yeah.
Big British film director, but with lots of Hollywood success as well. Anyway, so she said, I think I've got something for you. I'm working with Stephen Frears, and I'd love for you to audition for it.
Yeah.
So great. So I did. And that was a film called Philomena. And there was a small part in that I didn't get. And then about a year later, she called me and she said, I've got another one for you, a Stephen Frears film. And that was called The Program. And I didn't get that. But she loved me for whatever reason. I was so grateful for it. And then this came about, Florence Foster Jenkins. She said, I remember the email came, and it was like, she's so funny. When she emails me, it's just like one sentence. She said, like, I got something for you. And then it said, with Meryl.
Oh, my gosh.
And I'm like,
Meryl who?
Right. You mean Meryl,
yeah.
Right? Meryl?
Yeah.
Anyway, so I auditioned and I met Stephen, and anyway, somehow I got it.
That's so cool. You must have just been right for it.
Yeah, it was really great. So lucky, and it was really the first thing I'd ever done, first film I'd ever done.
Wow.
And I remember I was in the dressing, like the trailer, getting my makeup done on the first day.
Yeah.
And that was, I have a scene with Hugh Grant and Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah.
The actress Rebecca Ferguson, who's really a lovely
person.
Yeah. And here, boom, I'm here, in a chair, and then Rebecca's on one side, and Hugh Grant is on the other side.
Yeah.
And so they're sort of talking across me, and I'm, so like terrified and nervous. And at one point, Rebecca says, "So, David, tell us about you. What have you done? Have they seen you in anything?" And like the whole room, to me, the whole room went quiet.
Of course,
and everyone's
yeah.
like,
You're like,
yeah.
pin
and
drop.
I said, "Well, actually, this is this is the first thing I've ever done. And everyone screamed. Everyone screamed.
And was it after they had seen you?
No,
Okay,
this was the first day.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Everyone screamed. And they were both so incredibly kind.
Wow.
And they both said, wow, if you don't know what to do on set, if you get nervous, whatever, just come stand by me, ask me a question. Hugh Grant, you know what I mean?
Right.
Rebecca Ferguson. So kind, so great. And then we did a really great scene together.
Yeah.
It took all day. And so that's where it began. And then Meryl and I, in truth, in the film, we don't have like dialogue together.
Yeah.
But there are these moments where she's playing this singer.
Yeah.
This terrible, terrible singer.
Yeah. Which is just so funny to watch.
Right.
And you must have been just
unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, she sang terribly.
Yeah.
Brilliantly. Right?
Exactly. Yes.
And I'm the guy who goes to the show. Everyone goes and they're like, but no one wants to say anything because she's really rich. And I'm the guy who goes because she's terrible. And I love it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And that is something you would actually do, I feel.
I do too.
Yeah.
Like, in a way, I was playing me.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So there were scenes where they needed my reaction in the audience.
Yeah.
And her singing. So sometimes the camera was on her and sometimes the camera was on me. And, it was a whole filled room with everyone in the audience and all this. And before this, every take, our eyes would lock and we'd have a moment. We'd know, like, okay, we're working together.
You
now.
and Meryl.
Right. Yeah. Because maybe the camera's on her, but she has to react to the fact that I'm laughing at her. Or maybe the camera's on me and I'm reacting to her singing.
Yeah.
So we're acting together, even though that's not what was seen on the in the film.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an amazing, and she was so, she's just a real pro, and she, I'm nobody, but she knows I'm important for the scene, so she's gonna be there and have a moment before everything starts and make sure I'm okay. And you ready? Here we go.
Yeah.
Right. And then deliver the moment to me, even though the camera wasn't on her. So that I could have something to react to.
Yeah.
So cool, right?
That is so just
cool.
It's so cool. Now tell me, okay, so you said there was a 5-year gap where you were not performing. Was that just because you were busy and working on your
It's because New York completely destroyed me.
Yeah.
When I first came here. And going to London, almost like coming back to New York was getting away from a boyfriend. New York was getting away from my ambition. Or London was about like, you know what? I'm disappointed. I failed
in New York.
Yeah, I need to go to London. I had an opportunity. I'm just going to go and forget that ever happened. In the same way that after 23 years and I was in this relationship for 10 years, it failed, and I was like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, and so you go to London and you're working. And you're seeing performers in London, and are you going to shows and watching? And stuff like
I mean,
that?
I was. After 5 years, I was jumping out of my skin. I just had to.
You had to do it.
I had to find a way to get back on stage.
And so, how did you develop your perspective and your format of your observational, where everything comes through? Like, did that take time?
Yeah.
Did you start off by just truly being observational, or what was?
I didn't even know what I was doing when I started. I just tried to throw shit at the wall and see what sticks, or what felt good. Do you know what really worked for me was sitting on the stool?
Just the different physical, like doing something different physically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It changed.
It just changed your energy, you think?
It changed my energy. What happens, and you know this from seeing me on stage, I get on the stool, all of a sudden you're in a conversation.
Yeah, and your whole...
I'm like this.
Yeah, your whole hand is also very funny.
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm in a conversation with the audience, as opposed to standing. Sometimes it can be a bit TED Talky.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And this just breaks it right down. It makes it much more casual and engage and allows me to do a lot of acting in my stand-up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just not even a joke, but just a funny look or whatever. In the same way you would in a conversation.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So it gives me in an evening of stand-ups, it gives me something. People might not know my name, but they always go, I love that guy on the stool. Yeah. Right? So I've got a thing. And a thing in comedy is really good.
Yeah.
And you know what they say? the best comics have a silhouette, right? Think of a comic
Rosie.
There's a look.
Yeah.
There's a look and a silhouette, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ellen had that look, right? She always wore the same kind of thing. Mae
Sandra.
Martin, for a long time, wore the same thing.
Yeah.
And there's something about that. And I oftentimes, not so much in stand-up anymore, but when I started, I always wear a suit.
Yeah.
Always wear a suit.
Yeah.
It began to feel a little bit like a retro show, and that maybe was standing in my way, so I didn't do it for a while. But I remember when I started doing the Edinburgh Fringe, and 2 or 3 Fringe years in a row, I was this guy in the suit, and I'd be on the street handing out flyers, and people would come because I was in a suit.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, this guy looks interesting. This is something different. He's not some kid in a t-shirt." So sitting on that stool, and not that I always do it, but sitting on the stool really gives me a thing, and it helped me find my voice. I know that sounds crazy,
I think that's what my podcast feels like it's about, is like, how did you kind of go from what you were, take a bridge, and then find a journey, and then kind of get to where you are now. And I think, to me, I use the word bold, and I love the word bold. And I've noticed, I've had this podcast for 2 or 3 years, and before that it was called Side Hustle Divas, because I would ask people about their businesses, and then I kind of started asking people about, I kind of started interviewing comedians as a side, like who from a business perspective, how do you get people to your shows?
Right.
And then
useful.
I had a friend's dad who gives me advice all the time, and he was like, I don't think this is your podcast. He was like, I think you should be telling more, like we talked about, talking more about yourself, and like actually giving your own perspectives, and not just being like, okay, so now what did you do? I saw your Instagram post that said this, and this. You know what I mean?
Right. That feels a bit instructional.
Yeah, exactly. And so he was like, you at a party you're just very fun. You're telling a story. You're asking people questions. You're laughing. That's the only reason I would ever listen to your podcast.
Ben, that is such great advice for a stand-up. Be you at a party.
Yeah, right.
And you and I are similar, and I'll bet our mothers are similar, because I learned from my mother how to be good at a party.
Oh, yeah.
And I love being at a party, because it's a skill.
Yeah.
And if you learn it, you can enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's about chit-chat, and I love small talk. I could do it for days.
Yeah.
And how to be funny, how to make quick connections, how to be memorable, all that stuff. You know what I mean? And that's what I try and do on stage. Yeah. That's what you're trying to do in this podcast. That's what you do in your show. You know what I mean? I think that is an incredible skill.
It was, so I changed the whole format of the podcast. I did journaling, and I figured out, like, what do I want to talk about? And I just kept writing the word bold, and I think that I sent it to my friend Marna, who lives in LA, and she titled the podcast Life in Bold, because the words life and bold kept coming up in my journaling, and the kind of like turning your life into the font of bold kind of thing,
right?
And just kind of emboldening, and and I've noticed that in the last 2 years since I've had the podcast, maybe not as a cause of my podcast, but the word bold has really come out as a big word that people are using in advertising and in art and all of these things, and so I find it to be an interesting word, because it's like trending. It's always been trendy, but it's like a trendy word exactly right now. I'm seeing it everywhere.
Amazing.
And I ask people what boldness means to them, and people all have a different definition, and they talk about, sometimes it means being brave or courageous. And I talked to somebody in the most previous episode who talked about how sometimes it could actually become being smaller and being more authentic to yourself and pulling back and not needing such a show, And so I would love to ask you what in your life, what boldness has meant to you, or how you think of the word boldness and its definition.
Well, the thing that jumps out is the word that you just used, and it's a word that I try and return to, sort of in a similar way. Yeah. And that's courage. And I think it's about all of us pushing ourselves into those uncomfortable places, whether that's in your relationship, whether that's in your own personal development, whether that's professionally, whether that's at work, because that's where growth happens. Yeah. And that's where you're going to build your skills. That's where your success is going to come from. Not by staying in your comfort zone, but by pushing, taking that uncomfortable step, being wrong, being bad at first, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But sticking with it, staying courageous, have courage. And when we do that, success follows.
Yeah.
But it rarely comes from staying in our lane.
No. And have you always known that?
No.
Yeah.
No.
It's come over time a little bit.
Yeah, it's come over time.
Yeah. Because I feel like I find for myself when I think about being bold, and I think about it is outside of your comfort zone, and getting outside of your comfort zone, and that's where growth happens, like you say. And it's funny because you can think you're outside your comfort zone, or you can plan
tell
something.
yourself.
You can tell yourself you're outside of your comfort
Yeah.
zone, or you can do something that feels risky, but maybe it's not, or maybe it's not as intense, you know, as maybe it needs to be.
Right.
But I would say, you know, it's something I check in with myself. I would say it's a bit of a core value, I guess.
That's really great.
And
That's
it's
so
like,
great.
am I doing this? Like, am I outside of my comfort zone? Am I pushing myself?
Yeah.
And there's a bit of, like I said, like an expanding, you know, like, am I getting bigger? Am I pushing myself to go the extra mile? And then also, am I like being authentic to myself and making decisions knowing who I am? You know, I think that's a big part of it, is like the self-awareness.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot to ask for us to know who we are.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
if I had to wait to know who I was to make a decision, I'd never make a decision.
That's
right?
a very good.
I think you find out
Yeah.
who you are through the decision making, and I think a lot of people wait and then never make a decision because you can never resolve so much.
Yes.
So
That is gold.
right?
Yeah.
It's not gold. It's just it's been my
gold to me.
experience.
Yeah.
Because I've always I guess it goes back to that thing, like, let me tell you a little bit about myself.
Yeah.
And I always think, like, I don't know who I don't know who I am. I wear a pink shirt and jeans. That's who I am
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm, you know.
Yeah.
There's not a lot there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
and-
I am trying to let go of the need for
Yeah.
that level of certainty around who I am, and really, if I make a mistake or if I'm inauthentic, I'll learn it. Oh, you know what?
I
That
love
didn't
that.
feel authentic. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe that's part of the picture now. Maybe at that moment or right now, that's not authentically me. Maybe it will be later, but it's not me now. So,
I'm going to
okay.
take the word certainty from this, because maybe you know who you are, but it doesn't have to be certain. It doesn't have to be in writing, you know.
And also,
you're
it's
going to try something, you're going to make a mistake,
It's
you're gonna
temporary.
keep going, and it's temporary.
Because we evolve.
Yeah.
This is who I am now.
Yes.
I'm not gonna make a decision in 3 months or 3 years because I learned something about myself way back then. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it's still current.
Yeah.
But maybe you've evolved from that.
I love
and now
that.
you're in a different space.
That's so cool. I think we should end there.
Let's
I
end
think
there.
that's like a mic drop moment. David Mills, thank you so much for coming.
Ben
on.
Hawes, thank
Where
you. What
can
a treat.
people
What a
follow
treat.
you, find you, support you, help you.
The best thing is my Instagram
Yeah.
at David Mills DEPT, like department at
I
David
love
Mills
that.
Dept.
Department
Yeah.
is funny.
Yeah, and that's where I post my shows and things, and also you can sign up for my highly acclaimed and widely read
Yes.
Substack.
Oh yes, of course. Substack.
Called Quality Time with David Mills, and that comes out maybe once a month. I do put something up, and that always lists my big shows, but it just has a little bit of commentary about what's going on in the world and my perspective.
Oh, that's
on things.
so that's great. And what about? Tell me about department. How did you decide department?
For a moment early in my cabaret career, I was going around calling myself David Mills Department.
Okay.
Because there were drag queens around.
Yeah,
and everyone
yeah,
had a
yeah.
name.
Okay, great,
you know?
yeah.
And I wasn't a drag queen, but I wanted to be something a little more elevated than David Mills. And they'd
Yeah.
be like, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome David Mills Department.
I
you know?
love that.
And then I thought, that is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my entire life. I'm never doing that again. But I kept
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I
little-
have Ben Hawes HQ.
Yeah, that's another good one.
It's a
That's
fun.
another
I've
good
only
one.
recently added that because before that I think I was Laugh with Ben or something.
Right.
I wanted,
HQ is good because it's also broader. There's a lot you can do with it.
There's a lot that I'm a multi-passionate person with a lot of things going on, you know?
As you should be.
Listeners, watchers, I hope you enjoyed this episode. David Mills is such a fantastic guest, and I know everybody got so much out of this episode, and I hope you have a great day and even better week. May we all find the boldness to chase our dreams, and we'll be right back. There we go.